Okay, so the over the weekend, Kevyn Adams and the Sabres, they make their draft. ESPN has given the draft class a grade. I find the idea of an NHL draft class even funnier than an NFL draft class. Because in the NFL, it's like, well, we can evaluate this draft in 3 years because the guys will have played for 3 years. In the NHL, if we were to evaluate the draft class in 3 years, most of the players still would not be in the league.
Right. And like, what's the right now? What's the most recent draft that anyone that like studies prospects or studies hockey would feel comfortable evaluating? Like in giving like a grade to? Like, would you do
2020?
2020. There you go. So 5 years ago, that's Quinn and Peterka.
Yeah, okay. Right.
Like you can look at those picks now and go, yeah, Quinn at 8, probably not a great pick. Peterka, though,
Great pick.
34, great pick. So 5 years.
5 years. Anyway.
That's wild.
One thing about this, though, so the breakdown on ESPN on their draft grades, it's less about the draft grade and more about the write-up. They gave them a C+, the Sabres. Well, whatever, fine. You don't have to care about that.
Okay.
Now, this write-up about what the Sabres did, I feel like there are going to be a lot of... This might be 50-50. You might like this, you might not like this. But the write-up says, Buffalo had a modus operandi that was quite a bit different from previous drafts, and it showed. Talking about Murtka, the number 1 pick, reasonable bet to play top 4 minutes in the NHL, fits the profile, big and hard to play against. That's a bit high for him, left significant talent on the board, but the Sabres clearly identified him as an organizational need. David Bedkowski, a good selection as one of the most violent, physical defenders in the draft. If he makes it, he'll fill a depth role and be a nightmare to play against. And then they finish out with, there's a real chance that those are the only players who play NHL games for the Sabres in this class, as they departed from their previous MO of drafting high-end skill. So the write-up is basically, that they used to draft skilled players, and what they did in this draft was meat and potatoes, hard to play against. And their top 2 picks are guys that are hard to play against. To say anything of any team's draft and say, their top 2 might be the only guys that make the NHL, that would be normal. That's normal. That is a very normal draft.
And you're giving a third-round pick a lot of credit to say that he could make the league.
Yes, that's
at 18. Like odds would say he's just on where he was picked. He's what, 10% to make the NHL?
But when I heard Kevyn Adams utter the phrase tough to play against, I thought about another famous thing that happened in Bill's history, which is, took the sails out of our wind. I don't know if you remember that.
No.
All that, how that happened. There's a very famous moment in Bill's history where an old coach, people get mad because I'm trying to I'm trying to remember this, but Malarkey said it. Malarkey said they took the sails out of our wind, or maybe it was Greg Williams, and it's a gaffe from the Bills from 30 years before. You kind of said the thing you said before that was embarrassing. But whatever. Why did that come up in my brain? Because when Kevyn Adams said, tough to play against, and he spent another offseason saying tough to play against, I thought back to a Sabres draft long ago. And I thought, can I find this clip? How hard would it be to find this clip? The answer is not hard. It's just on YouTube. 2013. Draft day for the Buffalo Sabres. They're beyond blue and gold. And the message is they want to be tough to play against.
And so when we got him, we had conversations about, should we focus on forwards?
What about Zadorov, though? Zadorov's still there. Yeah.
My view of that is you need to focus on the player you think will have the best NHL career, and we'll sort the other stuff out later.
Spencer, you want to get tougher to play against?
I do want to. I think so.
I want to get tougher to play against.
That's the route.
Zadorov just kept sliding, and he wasn't the plan. We just kind of looked at each other, so this was a no-brainer.
Pull the trigger, the big Russian.
Buffalo Sabres select Nikita Zadorov.
2013. So Zadorov ends up being a nice NHL player, has a nice long career, didn't last long here because Tim Murray traded him away because he had some issues like alarm clocks.
He had alarm clock problem.
But I flashed back to, I've been hearing this team say we got to be tough to play against for more than a decade. The entirety of the drought, it's been about how we got to be tough to play against. And they never are. They never are.
No.
Why? Does anybody give a theory on that? Like a real honest theory. I've got an organization, a team, that has wanted to be a thing for 12 years.
Yeah.
That's pre-tank. Then they tank and they go get Eichel, and they start going with some young guns and some young talent. And every other year, outside of years where they're trying to be bad, they are trying to be tough to play against, and they never are. And I also think that the fans would respond to that. The most the fans ever came back in this entire drought was, as you pointed out, one of those Granato years where they scored a ton of goals and they were really fun to watch. Mm-hmm. Were they tough enough to play against? I don't know. I guess not. But they were fun.
And they won.
And they won games and they finished over 500. I'm not even – I know there's value in what Kevyn Adams wants to add to this team. I'm thinking to the article I read after Florida won the Cup, what lesson will teams take? Will it be about the grit and the toughness and the physicality? Or will it be about, you need that from great players? Because that's what Florida has.
Skill.
They have skilled players that do all that. And that's going to be your ceiling for that kind of team. And there are going to be a lot of teams that chase the middle ground. And I think the Sabres are kind of in a spot where it's just like, we got to be tough to play against. It's the GM's 6th offseason. If this was something he wanted to do and he's still chasing it, forever ago, they've been chasing this the entire time that the Pagulas have owned the team. Tough to play against. 2025, we got to be tough to play against.
Yeah.
2024 was the same message.
Yeah. And they let their best player lay on the ice without his helmet off and did nothing about it.
Right.
Not that that's quite the same thing.
It's part of it. It's part of it.
It is a part of it.
Just kind of. It took me right back into 2013, that blue and gold, like, we want to be tough to play against. Remember, but you want to say, like, how it's related. What's that after? That's after Miller gets his head taken off.
That's after those 2 draft picks, but also they trade Derek Roy for Steve Ott, and they signed John Scott, right, because they just thought, we got to be tougher, and that's kind of where it all started going south, right? That's when it all started to go, ooh, this team kind of stinks. Right around there. And is that just what you do when the skilled guys aren't good enough to get you to the playoffs? We got to do something, and we're Buffalo, so we can't get better star skill guys, so we'll do this. We'll be mean and gritty. And I think that's when it could start. That's when it can really start going south. And
if you're not skilled,
the fact that they're not actually ever that much tougher to play against, where there are like a story in the league, like, man, can you believe how hard it is to play against? They never get that. I think that's just when you lose. Is it more about the size of the player or the DNA of the player, or is it more just the kind of a result of when your team stinks, it's harder for everybody to be like 100% bought in all the time.
I think that's a lot of it.
Stuff.
I think that's a ton of it. That's why when you watch Florida, why do all these players do it? Some of them they do it all the time, and others.
But there's a wave that they're riding.
Yeah, they buy in. There's a buy-in. There's a buy-in. And
there's a buy-in, but it's all based in this team is great and it can win the cup. Mm-hmm. And if you don't believe that your team has that in them because they are 12 points out of a playoff spot, well, I think it's a little bit harder. It gets harder to be that way. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg. It's a hamster wheel, right? Like, just going back and forth and like, well, why aren't they like this? It feels like when you artificially pump it in, when your team's not that good in the first place, I don't know how valuable it actually is. If your team isn't actually good.
803-0550. We'll see how it goes. It's just kind of, you get to a spot where you've been the GM of the same team for so long, and you're still saying tough to play against.
I saw also points made this weekend about, well, like, Lindy likes this. Like, this is a Lindy style, isn't it? Well, like, sure, Lindy in '99 maybe was like that, right? Around the best goalie in the world ever. Lindy's last 2 legitimately great teams, maybe I'm skipping over Dallas, so I don't remember, what his teams were like when he went to the playoffs with Dallas. When he went to the playoffs more recently with New Jersey, what were they? Were they small and skilled?
Yeah, they scored a
led
bunch.
by Jack Hughes. What were the Sabres in 2007?
2006, he won the Jack Adams.
He won the Jack Adams in 06, and what were they in 07? Are they setting records with how many goals they scored with small forwards? So, like,
Mobile defenseman.
does Lindy like it? Or did Lindy, like, because I've got 2 Lindy teams, 2 of his most successful teams ever, which were small skill, let's go outscore them. And this team is the opposite of that right now. They're big. They might be able to score still. They were good at scoring last year,
Yeah.
and I've only taken Paterka off that. They certainly are big, though. They actually updated after the Timmins trade on Saturday. They're now the 2nd tallest team in the NHL. So they're big. They got that. They wanted to be that, and they are that.
803-0550, if you want to jump in. 1-888-550-2550 to join us. Jeremy and Joe on a beautiful Monday morning. Last day of June. Tomorrow, July 1st, unrestricted free agency. You know, maybe they just shock us. Maybe they blow us away.
What would be the minimum for shock? They're not getting Marner.
Honestly,
Yeah.
a top 6 player would shock me.
Like
A legitimate top 6 player.
Like if they sign Nikolai Ehlers tomorrow.
Yes.
That would be shocking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. Brock Besser. That'd be shocking, right?
Yes.
There's only a couple of those guys.
That they would get it done, that they would get that commitment. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe surprise is the correct answer here, but
John Tavares, Brad Marchand. That's got to be the end of the list. Like one of those 5.
Yeah.
Patrick Kane.
Tavares signed.
Tavares signed. Thank you. That's right. Tavares signed. So he's off the list.
Extended in Toronto.
Yep.